me that.
Thank you.
We also are excited to have musical guests, Nathan North and the Juan, coming to us. They're coming to us for their Green Room debut from Auburn, California. And if you've never driven that road, you'll know that they've come a long and winding way. So we're really happy to have them here. We also have our regular segment with The Bookery Reads with Heather Beatty-Spring. And we are introducing a new segment, Art on Art, with a guest host, Arthur Null. So that's our show coming up for today, and let's go ahead and get started. I have with me Lexi Boger. She is a published author, artist, and consultant for brand development, marketing, and land use issues in the agriculture, wine, and rural tourism industry. She is currently serving on the El Dorado County Planning Commission. Lexi is a volunteer and advocate for economic development and housing locally. She's a mother of two, living on the family farm in Placerville, California. She's a producing artist and deeply involved in the arts and culture development in the community. And as I mentioned, currently running for El Dorado County Supervisor, District 3. Welcome, Lexi.
Thank you, Paul. I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you today.
Yay. Great. So I think the best way to get this going, for those of us that pay attention to local and regional politics, and especially for those of us that might not, but we're definitely going to get those ballots in the mailbox. We've already received them, and we are in a very crucial time in our democracy where it's really important to pay attention to local issues, local candidates like yourself, and to do our best to be informed when we place that very precious vote. So, that said, what is a supervisor at the county level, and why are you interested in running for such a position?
Well, I'm interested in running because, well, it's not the most powerful, it's not president, but it's like a small president at the county level in our district. But you can make a lot of influence in people's life at the supervisor level. We make policy that affects everything from your ability to get a permit to housing to access to services and things that are really important. And we do really boring stuff too, like semi-judiciary land use issues and executive oversight of the county staff and all those processes. So it goes from pretty dry budgeting and things to some pretty juicy social stuff too.
So planning. This is something, again, most people don't think about unless they are deciding to maybe build, or they're entrepreneurs, developers. You are serving on the Planning Commission, and you have these roots in interest in agriculture and rural development. Obviously, not obviously, but if the name Boger rings a bell with some of you, Lexi, was born and raised in a family that is one of the most, how shall we say, influential wine producers in the region.
Oh my.
And I think throughout the state or the country, I don't know, they make great wine. So how has your interest, background in a little bit in planning, but especially in agriculture and land use, readied you for this position or to further your involvement?
Well, coming from agriculture, land use is something sort of I got into it through that door, just trying to figure out how we can do things on farms and get regulations to expand our businesses and things. But once I started looking at land use policy, I realized how powerful it is in terms of, it's powerful for good or evil. You can have exclusionary zoning, which we've seen for generations, that has caused lasting problems. You can, through good or bad planning, you can have equitable housing or not. Our housing crisis is caused in a good part for not really good long-term planning. And so you can see it can be used for good or bad. Economic development, land use planning, it has a lot to do with that too. Where are things allowed? How easy is it to do things? So even though it's such a dry subject, you realize the devil's kind of in the details there. So it's an important thing to have people who are knowledgeable about in there, because it can really change people's lives if you're smart about it.
Excellent. What are you, do you think are the major challenges facing El Dorado County at this time? And maybe an example or two of, how you might approach those.
How much time do we have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of in a nutshell, I think from my perspective, our biggest challenge right now is cost of living. And that encompasses a lot of things. Cost of living because economic opportunities are dwindling, so our incomes are sort of struggling. Rents are up, housing is up, so that compounds that. Seniors, we have a lot of fixed income seniors, so as housing prices go up or the cost of maintaining your land goes up, they get into a crunch. We have our kids who are graduating from high school. Their opportunities for a place to live and go to are sort of hard to do too. We've got increases in our utilities and water rates, and all of these things are sort of, in my mind, swirling around to create kind of a difficult situation for people to sustain and to thrive. So I'd like to loosen some of the reins on some of that stuff so that people can get some opportunities, so things are a little bit more comfortable. But right now, people are feeling the pinch, and we don't want I don't want to see El Dorado County become a place where only people in a certain comfort situation can afford to be here. I really believe in cross-class communities and that we have diversity of the kind of jobs we do, whether you're in production in a winery or you're a fancy lawyer. There should be a way to all be able to afford to be here. So I think that's a pressure on the community that I see as needing some attention.
That's a lot.
Wow.
You're
That's
right.
the answer I want.
That is a lot.
Wow.
I think the thing that stuck out in what you mentioned was this phrase, loosening the reins, or
not too loose.
Can you get a little more into the weeds about that? Like what does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think by loosening the reins, I mean the role of the government can be to set the environment wherein people are allowed to do what they want to do. So we can be extremely restrictive about what type of businesses or what type of industry we allow for certain reasons, or we can loosen up a little and say, hey, let's make some policies where we can have this. For example, this is sort of a new generation thing too. There's a real interest in camping, glamping, sort of outdoor experience, more natural, where people who come up here and want to stay don't necessarily want to be in a hotel, but they want to be in that experience. Well, that's really not allowed in the county right now. But that is a whole industry that a lot of people might want to get into, have their property be a hip camp, something like that. So, or farms might want people to stay. So that's just one example of where the county just hasn't thought really about it, so they just say no. And now we have to loosen the reins to say yes, and then it can grow. And that's just one example. I mean, you can go down the list of all sorts of areas where we just preemptively say no. And if we can start saying yes to some things, we can start getting some activity there.
Very interesting. That's I serve currently on the Economic Advisory Committee for City of Placerville. Great. And one thing I've learned rather quickly was that we have a real shortage of hotel rooms. We do not have a short-term rental ability in the city of Placerville, meaning there's Airbnbs are not permitted except in commercially zoned districts. So there are just a few around Main Street. So there actually is a shortage of hotel rooms and places for people to stay. And yet we are this obvious stopover between the Bay Area and Lake Tahoe and the ski resorts and all the great outdoor adventures that are available in the Sierra. So I think this comment, this idea you made about the glamping, that's fantastic. That's a really out of the box thought that we had a property up in Pleasant Valley of 15 acres, and this is about going back 10 or 11 years, I began to be contacted by some of the hip camp and some of these people saying, hey, I guess they're using Google Earth. They're going like, oh, you're near Placerville and you have 15 acres and your fields are empty. Like, they're like, oh, this could be a glamping situation. And of course, it was a little beyond us at the time. And it wasn't that there was a limitation from the county, but I didn't go any further with it. However, what a great way to make it affordable for people to come here. One thing I noticed on the Peak Committee is that there's definitely no shortage of interest in more tourism, more making the place more attractive, and just it serves all of our interests. I think all of our businesses. Let's go over to the affordability issue for a minute, because you raised it, and I have learned that. Now I don't know exactly this statistic, whether it's anecdotal, but it was that the number one demographic purchasing homes in the area right now is 35-year-olds average from the coast or from the Bay Area. So I don't know if had heard that as well, but
I wouldn't be surprised.
Wouldn't be surprised. So the thing is that as COVID, as the Zoom, working from home, and then not going back, people being able to continue to work from home, it's created a real influence on real estate outside of the Bay Area. Areas, our neighboring towns such as Grass Valley or Nevada City, already reached, kind of maximum pressure on real estate. So there's low inventory, high prices. We have high interest rates nationally. So it's kind of a tough moment in real estate. But this county, and especially I would say Placerville, Shingle, Pollock, up here, maybe less so than down the hill a little bit, discovered a little bit later, just maybe now starting to be discovered as an opportunity or a resource for people from outside the area, driving prices up. On this program, we've already spoken a lot about that Placerville is a really attractive place for people who are from here, who go away to college or go away and have jobs elsewhere. They come back here to start their families because it was affordable. They could afford to get a home. Thoughts?
Well, I'm living at the family property, so I came home, but there's not a house I can get into right now. So, and that's the lucky thing about farm property is that a lot of farm properties have farm labor housing. So lucky for me, I get to take advantage of that. But if I didn't have that privilege of the farm property, I would be out there with the rest of my friends really hustling to try to get into something. You got to know someone who knows someone who knows someone who's moving out soon, or get some old friend to say they're going to sell it to you first. That sort of insider trading on houses for locals is a commodity. But yeah, like you're saying, during COVID, I think the market jumped 40% or something that year, and it's the exchange rate between a Bay Area dollar and a Placerville dollar is just too attractive to pass up, I think. And but it has really, and I love the transplant. It's not like a don't come here sort of a thing. It's just, it really highlights that we haven't prioritized the housing for our own population's growth and our returning, our kids who go and come back and all of that. We don't even have the basic infrastructure to just meet that little bit of growth.
True, and we've noticed at Peak that a lot of employees and even business owners do not live in Placerville. They are coming from outside the area. Yeah. That's creating pressure on the traffic system, gasoline, carbon factor, et cetera. They cannot necessarily afford to live here. And we certainly obviously don't want to see a situation like some Colorado communities come to mind, or something like Bend, Oregon, or where it's just so impossible to live here, and everyone that you need to run businesses is coming from outside. Yeah.
Well, it creates it's called a barbell economy, right? So you've got the wealth is just the uber rich here, and then basically like a servant labor class. Like Jackson, Wyoming, there's been a study on the economic situation there, richest people in the country and poorest people in the country, and it all has happened through housing, restrictive housing. But yeah, it's a barbell, and that's not a good that's not a good mix. You know, we need to have it be all of the different housing prices and everybody being able to be in the niche somewhere there.
It's a good value to hold. I
Yeah.
hope we can move towards it. Speaking of the housing, what's the word I'm looking for?
Insecurity?
Insecure. Yeah. So that was one of my questions for you. We were involved last year with the approach to build a navigation center for the unhoused here in the county. We're one of, I believe, only 3 counties in the state that doesn't have a navigation center or a place where the unhoused can go to find services. We did decide to build one, and there was some resistance to this idea, which was, if you build it, they will come. You know, and that was, unlike Field of Dreams, this was not attractive. The idea was, if we create a housing navigation center, then more unhoused population will arrive here from Sacramento, et cetera, et cetera. What's your take on this whole topic?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's everywhere. It is not that we're a mecca for homelessness. It's California, it's the West, it's across the country. When we did finally build the shelter, pretty quickly the Upper Broadway camp was dissolved, and so it did have an immediate effect of being able to resolve one of the problems and have that shelter there. So the naysayers of just saying it's going to just bring more aren't really looking at what's actually playing out. There's a law that says that you can't ask people to move off of public land unless you've got shelter beds, and that makes total sense. Right now, you're just moving people around, you know, like puzzle pieces, and that's not good. But it's not enough. You know, I think that shelter is something like 60 beds. I didn't get this year's pit count yet, but you know, it could be 1,000 unhoused people countywide, including like teens who are couch surfing and whatnot. But it's a complex problem, and we need to address it not just with the shelters, but transitional housing, navigation services, mental health access, and, you know, other things like that, to come at it from all sides.
Thank you. As a candidate now, besides population using their vote to try to bring people like you into public service or higher offices in public service, how can people in our community give back or make a difference at this point?
Well, if you're not just treading water trying to survive here, you know, take care of yourself first. But yeah, I just tell people to find an area that you're passionate about, something you know about, and volunteer some time to get involved with whatever that is. I mean, there's plenty of areas we need help with, but what we need is, you know, volunteerism is what makes the wheels go. You know, no one's going to do it for us. So if you've got a niche and you've got an expertise and you want to pitch in, get involved. You know, see what programs need help, see what nonprofits need you, see if the county needs help, and get involved in whatever your expertise is.
Yeah. We'll put links in the show notes to some of the nonprofits here. We have CASA, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, MORE, Hands for Hope, and lots of different ways to plug in our community. The Women's Fund funds some of these organizations, and the Community Foundation has links, you know, to these kind of things. Yeah. So I think in closing, not to be too much like a campaign pitch, but which is okay with me, but I don't, you know, you've probably done enough of that. But how has, you know, your experience as an artist, a mother, and a member of the Boger family, you know, given you insight into helping cultivate some of the positive changes for our community?
Well, what do those all have in common, right? Farming, art, and parenting. It's all about creating an environment where something can thrive, right? The creative process needs the right environment. Farming needs the earth to be prepared to grow and thrive. And as a parent, you need to create an environment where your kids can do well and be healthy. And so, yeah, as a supervisor and in that role, my goal would be to have the county create that same environment for the community.
Wow, I say once again, Lexi Boger, we would be just utterly fortunate if you were elected to represent us at the county level on March 5th. Thank you for joining us on Placertopia Live.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. All right, so all the way. Whoops. He's got music. If I'm still talking, then you're still listening. Yeah. She wants to take the chair with her. So coming up next in their Placerville debut, Placertopia Live would like to welcome all the way from Auburn in another county, in another time and place, Nathan North and the Juan.
Get it, Juan. say could have had him any day. Only let him go so bad. Out of kindness, I suppose. Take it away. Boats till our poncho fell. Lefty lives out in them cheap hotels. Desert's quiet and Cleveland's cold. That's the way it ends, we're told. Poncho needs your prayers, it's true, but save a few for Lefty too. He just did what he has to do. Now he's growing old. Federal, they say, could have had him any day. Only let him go so bad. Goodness, I suppose. One more time. Federal, they say, could have had us any day. Only let him go so bad. Kindness, I suppose. Thank y'all. We're happy to be here. Our first time at the Green Room. I've grown up in this area. And this song I wrote on High Street. It's called Turquoise. You know, High Street in Auburn. And like, I feel like this is like Auburn across the, river, I wrote this song because I woke up next to this beautiful angel and I saw her turquoise earring through the window on her, the light caught her earring, and I inked it. I get emotional. But so I wrote the song for her with the light, the way it danced in her earring. It's called Turquoise. Light through the tree at the window, kiss your face. Turquoise earring glints your angel trace. Falling from the stars, but that's okay. When I kiss your neck, you kiss my face. And I know that we just met, but I can't forget. So I bet on you and me. Guess in time we'll see. I'm for you. face. I can hear your voice over the space. Midnight straight tequila kiss my face. And I know that we just met, but I can't forget. So I bet on you and me. Yes, in time we'll see. I'm for you. Get it, one. And I know that this song is a little bit bold, but I see all the treasures that you hold. I don't care about all the river's gold. I just need your hand to hold. 'Cause I know we just met, but I can't forget. So I bet on you and me. Guess in time we'll see. I'm for you. Thank you.
Welcome back. Placertopia Live, Season 2, Episode 2. And we are pleased to be launching a new segment upcoming. This is Art on Art. And I'm going to hand over the interviewer reins to Arthur Null, who may be new to some of you, renowned in certain circles for his unparalleled dissection of artistic minutiae. Arthur Null stands as a harbinger among the new media intelligentsia, graduating first in a class of one from the Mulvane Academy of Critical Theory. Null would go on to play an instrumental role in the Wrights Lake Winter Residency, the Hellhole Holistic Institute of Syzygy, and several other cultural bulwarks. Please welcome to Placertopia Live, Arthur Null and his guest.
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to start this interview by thanking Paul Godwin and the rest in El Dorado County as a severely dedicated painter, drawer, printmaker, sculptor, designer, and installation artist. Oren is proudest of his 2 sons, their rescue dogs, and their forever home in Diamond Springs, California. Oren, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Arthur. Thanks, everybody. So good to be here.
So, as you know, we're here today to talk about, I would say the most famous artist to ever arise from these foothills, the self-proclaimed most controversial artist in the world, a very polarizing figure, Thomas Kinkade.
Indeed, indeed.
So, as an artist who also, is steeped in the mythos of Placerville and the Sierra foothills, tell me your brief, superficial thoughts on Thomas Kinkade.
Well, a lot of my colleagues and I have spent many glasses of wine and hours into the night discussing our lament of Kinkade. But I stopped doing that once I saw a few key paintings. And I think it's easy to scoff, but I've spent some time reconsidering my viewpoint on Kinkade paintings. And in fact, I have to admit I've fallen in love with a few of his periods of work.
And I get like saying like you originally scoffed because he is, let's be frank, lambasted by the general art critical complex as being a kitschy substantialist painter. But I mean, he brings art into the homes of the most successful American artists.
Well, I think
no?
that's a great point. You're about to say that he's introduced art to a lot of non-art loving people. For example, it's a key fact that 1 in 20 homes in America has a Thomas Kinkade print hanging in there on the wall.
You know, as one of those 1 in 20 homes, I'd agree.
See, and you're a big part of this. So let's not forget that. What is it about TK, if we can call him TK, since he's a local? What is it about TK that you do admire? Let's start with that.
Oh, I mean, let's not use the term TK, so formal and impersonal. I'd prefer to call him Thomas, if that's okay with you.
It's okay with me.
So I don't know what I love about Thomas. Like, I mean, you go to like big city art shows and you see these impersonal, unseasoned color fields, these morose landscapes, these harsh, severe.
Isn't it doleful?
It's downright dolorous. But with Kinkade, like, he taps into that universal like want of home, safety, warmth, glowing light, and you could say like that's kind of an obvious human desire. Anybody could paint that. Well, if that's true, then why did nobody paint that to the commercial success of Thomas Kinkade prior?
That's a really great question. You know, I have a story. When I lived in Singapore, one year I was visiting a hardware store, a Chinese Chinese-owned hardware store.
What were you there to purchase, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh gosh, maybe something to scrub a sink. And they had a lot of tools and hundreds of tools. Everything was $1 or less, right? Plastic, made of plastic. And I stumbled upon a section of key rings, and I thought, key rings amidst all this kitchen crap, what is this? And I pulled one out, and I looked closely, and it was actually a cottage scene from one of Thomas Kinkade's famous calendar paintings, and it featured his name, Thomas Kinkade, and you could see just enough of a religious fish under the signature. And I couldn't believe it. I was in Singapore, and they were selling Thomas Kinkade keychains for 50 cents.
So you're trying to tell me you went into this store with a bit of a sinking feeling and discovered a hidden cottage industry. Simply marvelous. Yeah, you mentioned the Christianity of Thomas Kinkade, which goes to another interesting duality behind the man, the artist. Very famous for his Christian underpinnings and mythology, yet also kind of as the French say, enfant terrible or terrible baby of the art world, like notorious drinker, notorious womanizer, yet painted these wholesome scenes imbued with Christianity. How do you reconcile that with his artistic legacy?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I really have to admit that I never had a chance to see Thomas Kincaid on the street or run into him or recognize him in public. Not even at a signing. I was never really able to get inside. But there were times when we loitered outside. And but to your question, I think it's a great point. We actually know, it's common knowledge, that Kincaid was a bit of a partier. He was a bit of his own rock star, and let's not blame him. He could afford it. And he...
I mean, believe me, this whole notebook of notes, it's full of anecdotes, which my legal team has unfortunately advised that I do not repeat to the general public. So I shan't.
Advisably. But given that his paintings and prints always featured direct reference to religious symbols and in God we trust and so forth, it was not just a marketing ploy. It was a true representation of his faith. And in fact, he considered himself a deeply devout Christian, not only just a Christian, but one that had a role in this lifetime of bringing Christian views to the public, and that his work was morally, what's the word? He had to paint for the moral right of things. And so that's why everything in his work is idyllic and pristine and somber and filled with light.
Can I ask you a question?
What's so funny back there?
Well,
Who invited those guys
a
in
quick
here?
show of
I
hands to
thought
the
he
audience.
wasn't allowed to get into this place.
How many people among us has, unfortunately no longer with us, but who here has actually conversed with Thomas Kincaid in person? It's a deafening silence of hands being raised for those on the line. Oren, let me ask you a question. Do you have a Kincaid hanging in your house, or are you one of the
No.
19 and 20 that do not?
I'm one of the 19 percentile of the 20th.
Is that
He's not.
is that void intentional, or I mean, would you grace your walls with a Kincaid?
Well-
and if so, why? And if not, why not?
We know I would gladly have a Kincaid that may have been altered by an artist who maybe I knew better. For example, there are painters locally who have admonished prints of works that I admire a great deal. I don't want to mention any names, but one of them might be running for 3rd District Supervisor. In fact, though, I do respect Kincaid's paintings. I think it's a good point, if anyone who's local, to take a trip to the Placerville Library and find the Kincaid in there. There's an actual painting. It's 48 inches wide.
An original.
An original in oil. And it's a depiction based upon the bell tower area of Placerville in the 1850s or later. And when you look at a painting like this, I think it's quite good. It's quite nice. And in fact, when you look at Kincaid's paintings, and this is something I've said for years, when you look at some of his early paintings, especially his portraits of Placerville Victorian houses, they are so good and they are so objective, and they are not rich with the nuance of Christianity or any other agendas. They're just portraits of these beautiful Victorian ladies as they were. And I think I believe they belong in California historical museums because they're pictures of our history.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. On Monday afternoons, I often stroll the hallowed halls of the Crocker Museum in Sacramento, California, just below us. Beautiful repository of California artists. yet not a single Kincaid. Do you think that's a dereliction of their curatorial duty?
I kind of do. I think that Thomas Kincaid would probably claim the same thing, and we are running out of time, but I want to mention that one of the preeminent artists hanging in the Crocker is Albert Bierstadt, and he was the original painter of California. And in fact, Thomas Kincaid recognized his paintings and did everything he could to learn how to paint that way, and had a great effect on his skill. And in fact, Kate was incredibly skilled. Maybe not a perfect person based upon what you can find out about him and so forth.
Though what artist is?
Well, not any that I know. Can you think of one?
Beyonce.
So where do you find Thomas Kincaid in the history of art? Where do you like to place him?
A relatively new fish on the scene. I think when considering Kincaid, it's important to consider the man as artist, the man as entrepreneur, the man as factory owner. I mean, one can certainly take a very anti-capitalist view of the factory system that Warhol suggested and that Thomas Kincaid truly perfected.
In what way?
I feel like at a certain point, it became less about like the creative drive behind the paintings and more about satisfying a market demand that was of his own creation, n'est-ce pas?
N'est-ce pas? Si, n'est-ce pas?
Bien sûr.
Well, perhaps we may need to save this for another segment, but he did it his way, and he left us with this. And so we owe him our gratitude for tonight's material, and I believe that I'm getting this one. I'm getting this one.
Well, so I'll close things by reciting a famous quote by Thomas Kincaid. Regrets, I had a few, but in the end, I did it my way. This is Art on Art by guest Orrin Miller discussing the intricacies of Thomas Kincaid. Thank you for attending.
Arthur Null and Orrin Miller, dare I say, they'll be back. And actually, I would just love it if Orrin would become a regular on Art on Art. But it's up to it is up to Arthur Null to decide who his sidekick is going to be. So we'll look forward to that. I would like to point out that our centerpiece today has been specially created for the show by Planted on Main. Planted on Main, a very, what can I say, beautiful environment to experience nature as art and to rescue you at the last minute on Valentine's Day when Safeway is sold out. And no, they're really great over there. So Planted on Main has agreed to provide our centerpieces for the next few sessions as we experience the beautiful flowers of spring. And speaking of the beautiful flowers of spring, we have Heather Beatty Spring of The Bookery.
Hi, Paul.
So she's been on the show a few times before and always brought us enlightening reads. What did you bring for us today?
So I'm kind of talking about a similar theme that I've talked to before, always my favorite. Do you remember, I think it was in September that we talked about psychogeography and walking and wandering and flaneuring. Do you remember that conversation?
The flaneur.
Yeah.
And
you had
Robert,
just gotten back from a trip.
Landmarks, Robert McFarlane, and those.
Rebecca Solnit.
Rebecca Solnit. Fabulous. Yes, I do recall.
So I'm kind of building on that conversation today because I have read these 3 books by Rainer Wynn. Has anybody read these? It starts with The Salt Path. I read this a couple years ago. I can't remember the year she published it. 2019, 2020. These are pretty recent. And they have this beautiful art by Angela Harding, like the what do you call this style of art?
Woodcut. Woodcut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Prints.
So the next one was The Wild Silence, and then Landlines is her newest one from last year. So I just finished this book, and it's been on my mind. And it's about walking. So have you read these, Paul?
No,
Okay.
I work at the bookery, and
That's okay.
I just
There's
keep
so many
picking them up.
books.
I keep
They're-
picking them
I
up
know,
and
they're
looking at them. I
attractive.
want this book.
They're attractive.
Okay.
Well, The Salt Path is kind of a love story, and it starts out with her. She and her husband find out that he's been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And Darren told me no spoilers, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay? And they also lose their home because of this big, crazy legal fiasco. So they're basically homeless, and they decide to walk the Southwest Coast Path in England, which is a 630-mile walk. It takes them a couple months to do it, and no spoilers. So it's about walking. It's about the land. And it's really beautiful. And what I've been thinking about, so you know how I am, this is what I talked about before. I like to make connections with other things I'm reading, with stuff I'm talking to people about, and even like the class I teach at the college. So I'm thinking about how walking in these books is almost like walking in your head through the mental landscape of both the book geographically and the experience as a human being. So I've been thinking about books as mental mapping. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it wants me to listen to that book on audiobook so I can actually walk while I'm listening to it.
Oh, would that be the coolest? It
Yeah.
made me want to be walking all the time, too. Okay, and so the next book, The Wild Silence, is set in Iceland. And so she's walking on like ancient volcanoes and very cold landscape. And this one kind of has a theme of aging and change and being present in that change. Really beautiful book, too. I read this last year. Oh, a weird coincidence. I love the coincidences, too. It's like one of those connections. Is that I read, I can't remember because it was 2021. I had COVID, and I read one of these two. And then recently in January, I had COVID again, and I read this one. So I don't know what the deal is, but it's kind of a cool, these are beautiful books to read if you're homesick, because
Yeah.
you can mentally wander out there and just be sick in bed. But your head is out there.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. I know,
The
it's kinda
analog
cozy.
is people who watch all the Godfather movies on a rainy November day
Yeah.
while eating lasagna, or myself.
Sounds
I
perfect.
love to read and then watch Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy by John le Carre
Oh.
every winter. You know, it's
Oh.
just like that's a ritual.
I
I
have
read
my
it again
traditions like
and
that, too.
it just keeps opening up, and then I watch the film, which is amazing. Okay.
I
so
love that.
these are
Maybe I'll have to
great.
read, I'll have to come back to at least this one every
So
time
tell
I
us
get
about
sick.
Landlines,
So
though.
Landlines is the newest one. This one is so beautiful. It starts in Scotland, and the walk is, what is the path called? I made myself notes because it is, to be honest, it's a very foreign landscape to me. The UK, also Iceland. So I have to look at a real map a lot of times while I'm reading these books. And the maps in the books are not satisfying to me. Let me see if I can find an example. Because you just get a little portion of the trail. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I can't even find a good example. So you don't get, I need the whole picture. I need the coastline. I need the, where the land changes, the mountain ranges. So I'm creating this mental map while I go, and also walking through the process of reading the book and what does this is what we do with all books that we read. What does this book ask me to get out of it? What is it? Where is it taking me, and how do I read this book? So the mapping process is also mapping your literary journey through a book. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah?
It makes
Okay.
me really want to read that book.
Okay, so this book starts in Scotland, and it ends up a lot longer than that, as you can see by the subtitle, Landlines, the remarkable story of a 1,000-mile journey across Britain. So it's not just that top part through the Highlands and along the coast of Scotland.
Yeah.
The journey
Okay.
continues
Okay.
for 1,000 miles, and it is remarkable. And so if I had to say kind of what the overall theme of this one was, I would say it's biodiversity, actually. And it's really beautiful because she's talking about landscapes changing while also talking about aging and changing herself. and about how each moment contributes to your DNA as a human being and the life you've lived, like having your rich, full moments. And then she's also talking about how the landscape itself, these old paths all across the UK, are full of the moments of every footfall that has happened on them. And it's really interesting to think of, she talks about different wars and the Jacobites and all the different groups that have like walked on these paths. And you're there in the history for parts of it. And then you're also in the devastating reality of the now, where they're losing a lot of their natural biodiversity because so much change is happening around the time. This book was written in 2021, and so she's grappling with Brexit, and she's talking to a lot of people that she meets, and people talking about their connection to the land. So really, really cool book that kind of brings it all together. I think I had a favorite quote I wanted to read you.
Oh, yes,
Perhaps.
please do. Please
Let me see if I noted this. No, you know what? I think I'd rather just tell you about the next book now.
Okay, wait. First.
Okay, go.
First.
Yeah.
This is going to be a great teaser for our guest, April 25th, who is Ben Goldfarb, the author of Eager, which is a kind of rediscovery of the beaver and the place that the beaver holds in the natural world, and his new book Crossings. I'm sorry.
About crossing roads.
which is concerned with how roads have altered the landscape and the natural world.
You're right.
So Ben will be with us and will be reading at the Bookery the week of April 22nd, Earth Day, and that's super cool.
And I thought about talking about that book today, but I figured
No,
in
we'll
a
do
future
that.
episode, let's talk about Crossings because I loved that book. And you're right, very much linked to the way that modern human industry in the last 100 years especially has changed the land, and there's no stopping that now. So both of these authors, Ben Goldfarb and Rainer Wynn, are looking at ways to live in harmony with that and try to do the least possible damage from this point on. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So then the next book I read after Landlines was this book, Maps of the Imagination, The Writer as Cartographer. So it kind of brought it all full circle because this book is about the process of making art. So I was thinking about it with the art conversation too, and how you're creating a mental map for your reader. And as a reader, you're going through that process I was talking about where you're creating your own map of how to approach a work that you're reading. So this book is so cool because it goes into the conventions of map making, geographical map making, the history and conventions and practicalities of making a map, and how every map is created with a purpose in mind, and so something has to get left out naturally. And then this writer, Peter Turchi, then goes into a lot of literary works like Borges and Nabokov, and talks about how those writers kind of map out your mental journey for you.
I knew the book looked familiar. I studied with Peter Turchi at Warren Wilson College. Yes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yes.
He gives you a lot of his personal experiences too. So he talks about his son and a map his son makes of the college campus where he was teaching, I think, when his son was young, and how different that looked from a map he would have made of his college campus. So you would probably really enjoy this book because it gets a little bit more personal about him too, but also really literary and beautiful, beautiful writing about cartography and literature. So my brother gifted me this book for Christmas. I love it. We don't sell this one at Bookery regularly, but it would be really easy to order. The whole Rainer Wynn, all three of these we're selling at Bookery on our new shelves. If anybody's interested, that we have them there.
Yeah. So I want to zoom back for just a second, which is just, I'm compelled to share an anecdote because you're talking about the traversing all of England and Scotland on foot. When I was a young man of 20, I saw a film called My Dinner with Andre, and in it they talked about Findhorn, the spiritual community that grew 60-pound cabbages in the north of Scotland, and I just couldn't resist. So I booked myself a courier flight on Kuwait Air, if you can imagine, and I was an air courier, which meant that they let me fly for free to London carrying a purse of documents, which I have no idea what they were, and handing them off. to do so. And then I hitchhiked from London to the very north of Scotland to go to Findhorn.
Oh, that's
and in so
cool.
doing, I saw Lancashire and Morecambe, which actually Morecambe is mentioned prominently in the Robert. Sorry, I'm mental blocking. McFarlane's book.
Yeah.
He talks about the salt paths, these paths that are half underwater and they only emerge at low tide, and you hike them in Morecambe. And our own guest, regular Aidan McGuire, is from Morecambe, as it turns out. And then I went through Loch Ness, and I actually was walking next to Loch Ness without a ride for an hour and got picked up by a Scottish rock band from Glasgow and eventually deposited on the North Sea. So, having had that experience, it's, that is, having had the experience, all of this is super enjoyable, but the map is not the territory. And so I don't recommend you go out and hitchhike, but I do recommend you go out and get your own experiences out on the road.
And that reminds me, do I
enjoy
have time
these
for
books.
a quote?
Yes, you got one more, or a
So
quote. Yeah.
this is from the Maps of the Imagination, and hearing your little story reminds me of how part of the point of this book is that we all create our own kind of mental map that's our whole life. All the experiences and the things that we've come in contact with, both in the real world and just emotionally and spiritually, create this kind of vast inner map that then, like the artist, is going to want to use bits of to put out into their art. So thinking of your experience and how that's informing everything you hear today, or a book that you might read, reminded me of this quote. While our perspective and understanding are undeniably limited, in some sense we each have the world, or we each have a world, one that includes not only our hometown and our favorite vacation spot, but Victorian England, volcanoes we've only read about, and Vietnam, which has a place in our mind even if we can't find it on a globe. We compile mental maps that are wildly skewed, a mental atlas so large and complex that we can never fully convey it to anyone else. Then we live in the world these maps create. So, really cool, and a cool way to think about art, and every artist kind of bringing a bit of a mental map, and it might be a completely fictionalized and created map. The book ends with Robert Louis Stevenson and Treasure Island, and how he would kind of like doodle maps just for fun, and he started creating this map with all the little harbors and bays, and became so enchanted with it that he started to people it and people the woods that were all around it, and that ended up being Treasure Island. And interestingly, he lost the original map that he was so proud of and so attached to, because it kind of had this emotional place in his heart and in the writing of the novel, and had to recreate one to be published in the front piece of the book. Oh, and that reminds me, this book says, and I want to know if you have thoughts or ideas on this, it talks about many examples of children's literature and adventure stories that have maps in the beginning, but says that very few adult fiction includes a map. And so I wondered if you've ever come across a really cool map in an adult book. And Tolkien for sure, and he counts that in the adventure stories. That's a great example, and he mentions that. And he does say Faulkner includes one in the beginning of Absalom, Absalom. But I kind of wanted us all to be on the lookout for really cool maps that are unique. If you guys find any, text them to me, email me, because I want to start like a collection of all the most beautiful maps in the beginning of books. I love when books start with maps.
Heather Beatty Spring, we're so grateful for the Bookery and your whole crew and your family who've joined us. Darren, of course, is one of our regular guests, and the girls who sang at Christmas time and who obviously will inherit the Bookery and be running Placerville before very long. And I hope they'll be joining us on the show again. Thank you for coming back on.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, great. And so this is our Hop On, Pop On segment. I'm pleased to introduce from Myrtle Tree Arts, Amira Godwin.
Hello, thank you, Paul. Happy to be here, and I couldn't think of a more perfect prelude to talk about than Heather's talking about the books as a mental model for artists. And what I want to attached to that beautiful description is the project that we're working on together with many artists called Ripe Area. And we worked together with Myrtle Tree Arts, finishing last year's work called Fireland, Knowing the Territory. And that came from thinking about how does an artist understand the territory that's under threat of wildfire and climate change. This year, we're taking kind of a similar stance, but a different topic to talk about water, the preciousness of water in our county and in our watershed that is blessed with the American and Cosumnes rivers, and how all of us as artists and as citizens can protect the watershed. So we're doing that with a lot of workshops, artist-led workshops across media, poetry and music and sound recording and hands-on making things, lots of ways of interacting with the natural resources and to think about water. And then it's going to culminate June 2nd. We'll have a chance to experience some of this in the podcast in the next 2 months. Some of the great ways that community can come together and experience art together through native plants, native foods, music, celebration, poetry, and dance. So really excited to be part of this. It's supported by the California Arts Council grants to the California Creative Corps through the Sacramento Office of Arts and Culture, and with our partner, the American River Conservancy.
Wow. We will, thank you, Amira. We will have links to Ripe Area in the show notes, and to Myrtle Tree Arts, of course, who is a sponsor, producer of Placertopia Live. As we transition back to our musical guests, I do want to just give you a little bit of background on them, and also would love to thank, at this moment, our associate producer, A&R director, Rena Wakefield, who is constantly looking for new talent out across the state to bring onto the show. So she discovered, dare I say, Nathan North, who is a folk country artist born and raised in Northern California. His music is influenced by classical and contemporary artists such as Sam Cooke, Townes Van Zandt, Bob Dylan, Noah Kahan, Zach Bryan, and the Rolling Stones. His writing portrays the struggles and triumphs of his adventures in gold country, from rafting and fishing to dating and heartbreak. Juan, North's percussionist drummer, accompanies him with an evocative mixture of hand drums, influenced by Juan's native land of Colombia and the classic Americana washboard. Please welcome back to Placertopia Live, and dare I say again, terrible. Heretofore, I shall not say dare I say. This evening, Placertopia presents, at the Green Room, 7 to 9 p.m., Nathan North and the Juan. With a very low $5 cover, you can come to a full concert with these guys, and this is our new model, which is we'll have a musical guest on the show, and then they will be performing a concert the evening of the show. Why not? Nathan North and the Juan.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. We appreciate it. This song I wrote a few years ago. It's about meeting someone, going out to a city, and experiencing each other for the first time. It's called Tattoos. Play this crazy game where we go into the city, sleep with strangers for the night to see whose is more pretty. Get matching tattoos and yours would look so very pretty, with that fresh new ink all into introduce you to my mommy. My mama don't like tattoos. She likes pretty shoes. Think she might like you. My mama don't like tattoos. She likes pretty jewels. Think she might like you. Think she might like you. Oh, oh, oh. Think she might like you. Play this crazy game where we go into the city, spray graffiti with our secrets, see whose is more gritty. Take our baggage and we throw it off of Cowell's Mountain, knock at heaven's gate till they let us in. My mama don't like tattoos. She likes pretty shoes. Think she might like you. My mama don't like tattoos. She likes pretty jewels. Think she might like you. Think she might like you. Oh, oh, oh. Think she might like you. Play this crazy game where we go into the city. I don't know if I trust you yet. Take our baggage and we throw it off of Cowell's Mountain. I don't know if I trust you yet. I don't know if I trust you yet. I don't know if I trust you yet. I don't know if I trust you. My mama don't like tattoos. She likes pretty shoes. Think she might like you. My mama don't like tattoos. She likes pretty jewels. Think she might like you. Think she might like you. Oh, think she might like you. Think she might like you. Think she might like you. Think she might like. I think I might like you. Thank you, guys. The song's called New Age Bandit, and it's about my life as a redneck Robin Hood. People always stare at me, I don't understand it. All I wanna do is be a new age bandit. Heaven came down and made a life a Hamlet. Running from my demons like I can't even stand it. When I see the powerful, they're so empty-handed. Ravaging the weak like they didn't even plan it. Then I met a man who has everything around him, selling cancer to the world with smiles wrapped around it. New age bandit, no one understands it. Smiles wrap around it. New age bandit. Then I met a prophet and he told me not to stand it. So I wrote their message on the walls to be candid. Heat make flame and the cold got stranded. Now I'm up in heaven, I'm a new age bandit. Smiles wrap around it. No one understands it. New age bandit. New age bandit. New age bandito, no casa bonito. I drink my grave in the Casa Amigo. I misbehave and I stumble on people in the misdirection. I thread on the needle. New age bandito, no casa bonito. I drink my grave in the Casa Amigo. I misbehave and I stumble on people in the misdirection. I thread on the needle. Woo! New age bandito, no casa bonito. I drink my grave in the Casa Amigo. I misbehave and I stumble on people in the misdirection. I thread on the needle. New age bandito, no casa bonito. I drink my grave in the Casa Amigo. I misbehave and I stumble on people in the misdirection. I thread on the needle. Woo! Smiles wrap around it. No one understands it. New age bandit. New age bandit. So thank you.
Nathan North and the Juan. Nathan, let's chat for a quick. No, I mean, yeah. Why not? On your lap? Come on over, sit on my lap. We're just gonna refocus here. I think I'll take this opportunity to tell you about our next program coming up. We're on March 14th, when our guest will be the amazing David Rothenberg, who is a clarinetist, author, publisher. He has a record company, Terra Nova Press. He publishes a journal on music and nature. He is a field recordist. He sells field recording equipment. I bought my hydrophone from him. And he will be here on March 14th visiting us from the Hudson Valley. So that's super cool. Nathan, you're here. Hey, thanks a
am.
lot. Beautiful music.
Thank
wow.
you for having me.
How great. So I understand this is your first time at the Green Room. How do you like it so far?
I love it. Some of my friends have played here before, and I've just seen it, and I have not personally been here, but it
Yeah.
exceeded expectations.
Doesn't
if
it?
that says
Yeah, we're really proud of it, and we want to thank our tech director, Doug Neal, who helped build this groovy place, and of course, Jen Tai and Molly at the bar and everybody.
I can feel the art in the room.
Right?
Like literally, you can feel it.
Yeah, there's an art show up even right now from Vince Darwood, a Green Room regular. So you're just down the valley, past the river,
Cross the
through the
river, through the
confluence,
bridge.
right? We got to go through 2 forks at least of the American River, the south and then the north. And I understand you're part of the arts community, music community in Auburn. Tell us about what you're doing over there, and you're putting on some events. And
An example of that is this shirt that my drummer actually illustrated in like Strudberry is a new art place in Auburn. And I brought in he did it with a Sharpie on a piece of paper, and I brought it in and like
it says, for those of you that can't see, it says just here.
for Ellie, which
Ellie.
is my dog. I should have her. She'll be here for the show, but on the
Can you
back.
show us the back? It also says, but in embroidery, just here for Ellie. She looks a little bit. Ellie looks like a Scotty or something. That's a
She's
sheriff.
a little
What's
shit,
up?
Sue.
Oh, she's a little shit, Sue.
But basically, like it feels like home over here because I can hear what you guys are talking about, community art, and I'm like, that's what we're doing, exact same thing.
Isn't
So,
it amazing?
It's kismet.
So it's great. So I think this is going to be our new theme for the year, which is drawing together these communities up and down the spine of 49.
Up and down the spine. That should be a shirt.
Right?
Up and down the spine of 49 with a
Because from Mariposa to Sonora, Jackson, Plymouth, Placerville, Coloma, Auburn, Grass Valley, Nevada City, Downeyville, like these are amazing communities with wonderful artists like yourselves and musicians, and we're just starting to draw them together regionally and share all our goodness and resources as we protect this land that we are borrowing.
I could not.
Right?
Everything you guys have said, I'm like back there in the backstage. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Community. That's the main thing I want to say. Community
Awesome.
is
Thank
right.
you. Yeah. So Nathan North from Auburn, and tell us about the Juan, man. He's a really
The
important
Juan,
part of your
I was playing at
sitch.
Tap and Vine, and he comes up to me and he's like, "I play drums," and like a lot of people come up to me, they're like, "I play drums,"
They all
and
say
I'm
I
like,
play
I'm
drums.
like,
That's what they all say. I know. Last night we had an event called Give the Drummer Some, and it was Jerry Barton, and he had open drum with 2 kits, and every drummer within 100 miles got to come here and play. It was insanely good, but yeah. So
But
go
yeah,
ahead. So he
I
said that, and
met
you did
him,
what
and
I
I'm
do,
like,
which is
I was like,
drummer.
okay. I was like, here's my number, here's my card, type
Yeah.
thing. And then he was persistent. He's like, no, I really play, bro. And
He
then
really does.
we met to like do a little rehearsal, and then he just. No one can play Poncho and Lefty by Townes Van Zandt when I'm finger picking it, except for him. So I was like, okay, he's a keeper. But since then, we've played probably like 70 shows since then, and I just met him a year ago. So he's
That's
my
amazing.
right-hand man. He's just like new in this area, and I'm very connected in the area. So I got to sort of plug him into the main vein of the foothills, baby.
Fantastic. So, okay, good. So did I hear you or your brother or you run a open mic up in there, or?
Yeah, I run an open mic at California Club every Tuesday.
Okay,
It's kind of-
Tuesday, California Club, Auburn. What
It's
else?
kind of it's like the level. It's kind of intimidating if you're just like a random dude coming off the street, because the level, everyone plays with bands and we're all homies and we all play together. It's kind of a scene, but like
Great.
it's
Sounds
like
hard.
we're working on a showcase at the Odd Fellows,
Yeah.
But it's a lot of just homies from the foothills. Just that a lot of people go out and they like a lot of people play. They shred. They're at home just shredding, and they don't have the community. It comes back to community. And we're trying to create that community where we can have artists that we all support each other. And that's like really like artists, I feel like is my like lifeblood, being an artist, and like anything art, whether it's like a shirt like Quan drew, my drummer, or it's playing or whatever, any mode of art, it's just like, let's go.
That's awesome. Thank you for that message. And I'm a little prone to that T-shirt. We were Shorky owners, which is, you know, Shih Tzu Yorkie, and another friend has a Jack Shit, which is great breed. But I am really in love with the Shih Tzu breed, even though
you'll
even
meet
though
her
they
after
are
the show.
petulant. They can be petulant and aloof. But you know, there's something I like about that, the hard-to-get nature of a Shih Tzu.
She's 11.
Yeah.
I've had her since 11,
Yeah,
and she is very...
She doesn't recognize you, right? Yeah.
She is very in her own, you know, she'll growl sometimes.
Yeah, she growls. I mean,
if
if
you don't
leave
pick her up right.
No, if you leave if you leave them for, you know, you go away overnight or whatever, like it takes a few minutes for them to like let you back in their heart. They're pretty funny that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's our show for today. It's really fun to be able to end it with you sitting here. Cue end music. We want to thank our associate producer, Rena Wakefield. We want to thank our special guests, Lexi Boger. Our theme music is by Grayson Howard. We had Arthur Null and Oren Miller, Art on Art. Placertopia Live is a production of MyrtleTreeArts.com and the Green Room Social Club. We are here once a month. You can hear us on the Green Room YouTube channel or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and wherever you go to find your podcast content. For Placertopia Live, I'm Paul Godwin. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having us.